Okay, I guess we can start ahead with the session. So hello everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning from wherever you're joining us from today. I am Afsar Binti Mirza, currently working as a research officer at ICCCAD and also today's moderator of the session. Today's enticing session on unfolding accountability for climate finance to harness locally led adaptation, the opportunities and challenges, brings together a brilliant panel of speakers whose expertise really resonates with the title of the session today. So I hope you're as excited as me. I can also see that all the panelists have turned on their speakers, so thank you for that. So just a little bit of background on the session. As you know that COP30 is also progressing. We have the community-based adaptation conference coming up. And as you read more on the climate change discourse related to adaptation, mutual accountability and localization related to climate finance will be really a critical agenda at the upcoming COP30. And currently, to increase the climate finance pool for adaptation, it is really important to dismantle the existing dynamic based on top-down accountability processes, which always supports the North funders or the donors who are based in the global North. However, it really echoes less with the climate-affected population from the global South. Hence, this session will really talk about different participatory processes that strengthen systems accountability and resilience, which are really critical to operationalize locally led adaptation and downward accountability in the global South. It will also shed light on the nuances of accountability and what it looks like for locally led adaptation. Maybe the answer is not always picture perfect. However, it's a long journey, and I think the journey needs to be uptaken by all of us. And one of the core things that we discuss in this panel session will be Principle 7 of locally led adaptation, which really signifies the importance of ensuring transparency and accountability. Which, if I try to unfold it, it means making processes of financing, designing, and delivering programs more transparent and accountable downward to the local stakeholders. It also pushes for a business unusual approach where donors, governments, intermediaries, and other adaptation implementers make their governance around arrangement really publicly available so that it can really transmit to the voices of the local communities in the climate finance chain. So without further ado, let me introduce the speakers today. Today I have with me Roji Joshi, who's a researcher for locally led adaptation and climate finance based in Nepal, working at International Institute for Environment and Development. She has substantive experience in designing and delivering research policy analysis and programs on climate change, focusing on locally led adaptation, climate finance, governance, sustainable development, while also engaging collaboratively with diverse range of stakeholders. Roji has provided technical support to manage locally led programs and heighten Nepal's profile in UNFCCC negotiations. I also have with me AKM Azad Rahman, who's a development professional at UNDP Bangladesh. He's a seasoned development professional working at UNDP Bangladesh. Azad brings rich years of professional experience in the development sector and the government of Bangladesh for decades now. For more than a decade, he has served within the UNDP, particularly in the areas of climate change, community empowerment, agriculture and food security, and national policy for climate change adaptation. He has led Bangladesh National Adaptation Plan, NAP, and has played significant role in acting as a team lead for the nature, climate, and energy portfolio for Bangladesh. He is now leading two of UNDP's flagship program in Bangladesh, which is called LOGIC, Local Government Initiative on Climate Change, and A2I. We also have with us MD Raju Ahmed Muslim, who's a climate activist focused on climate justice. He mainly advocates for climate finance and governance at local, national, and regional and global levels. With over a decade of experience in organizations like World Research Institute, Oxfam, and Transparency International, he has led social justice campaigns and action research. He's mainly known for his role in Bangladesh's Just Transition campaign. Masoom also collaborates with workers, governments, businesses, and climate funders. He holds a background in anthropology and works at the intersection of societal and environmental issues through interdisciplinary approaches. So we have a brilliant lineup of panelists, as I mentioned, and very rich background. So I'm really excited for today's session. So without much further ado, I will start with Roji, if you don't mind. So I know IID has been working really rigorously to establish mutual accountability among all actors in implementing climate projects, and that is by facilitating conversations between donors, intermediaries, and local organizations to really enhance mutual accountability and drive institutional change when it comes to disbursing climate finance at the very local level. So, what are some opportunities and challenges that you're witnessing while doing this? If you could talk a little bit about that. And also, it's really exciting that IID is also working on few metrics of accountability. So, if you could talk a little bit about the LLA markers as well. Over to you, Roji.
Thank you, Apsara. And it's great to join Ajad and Raju as well for this session. Just before I move on to speaking, I just wanted to be clear, Apsara, how much time I have.
Sure, Roji. I think you have like 6 to 7 minutes, so you can definitely take your time.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, I just didn't want to take much time and let other speakers speak as well. In terms of accountability, the mutual accountability, I'll just give a bit of context about the principles of locally led adaptation and where we are at and how we are bringing the markers and the topic of mutual accountability into the conversation for ensuring the effective LLA or for tracking the implementation of LLA. So now we know that there are 8 principles of locally led adaptation, which was endorsed in 2021. And since then, we have a lot of endorsers, a growing number of endorsers every year. And now we have more than 130 endorsers. And that poses a lot of challenge because with a lot of endorsers coming now, there's a challenge, there's a risk of LLA just being in the name, in the commitment, and not really into the action. So shifting the commitments into action is a big challenge now with the growing endorsers. So that is one of the challenges. And how do we track that that the institutions who have endorsed the LLA are actually implementing the LLA or are doing the LLA? So we have come up with the accountability, the tracking, the accountability system. We know in the climate finance delivery chain, there are providers, intermediaries and recipients. Providers are the ones who provide the funds. Usually they are the donors like the bilaterals, multilaterals, philanthropies as well. And the intermediaries are the ones who generally transfer the funds or do the fund management between the recipients and the providers. Now, we know that the challenge of the climate finance delivery chain or even the development aid is that it's more bottom up, it's more more upward accountability with the recipients and intermediaries being more accountable to the donors and rather than donors being accountable to the intermediaries and recipients. So it's more upward than downward. And the need of the hour is to have more mutual accountability among different actors in the climate finance delivery chain and have the trust building amongst the actors so that there is a true LLA and it's not just within the commitment and the real LLA in the sense of devolving decision making, having the say on fund management, having the say in implementation is there. So that's why we need to have a mutual accountability towards it and address the challenge of more upward accountability that is existing in the system. And in terms of IID's work, I will just briefly show two slides, just a pictorial representation of what we have been doing, if that's all right, of Sarah.
Yeah, that's so fine. Are you able to share the screen?
I think, yeah, can you see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Um, yeah, so we have this 360 accountability approach, which is about promoting the mutual accountability that I was mentioning earlier. And it's about having all the actors accountable to each other on what they are doing. For example, a donor
Sorry.
is a
Okay,
donor
can you
is
just make the slides full screen if that's okay?
oh, sorry.
Thank
Yeah, so the 360 accountability approach, I was talking about this delivery chain where there are providers, intermediaries, and recipients, and um, who is accountable is the question, as I was saying, and it's everybody is accountable, and there should be mutual accountability between these actors. So we have developed the markers to test the accountability and to test the action towards implementing the LLA. With the objective that there would be more trust between the actors. And this process is aimed at having more transparency around what donors are doing, what intermediaries are doing, and what recipients are doing. And they can have questions, they can give feedback to each other and raise questions and so forth. It's about developing matrix so that we have more tangible activities that bring LLA into life. And measure its effectiveness. So it's as I said, it's about giving feedback around how different actors along the delivery chain are performing, are doing in terms of LLA and contributing to the localizing voices, localizing decision making, and implementation. Um, so we have this markers and indicators. I'll come back to the 360 accountability again. So we have this markers, which is a group of indicators. And for each marker, we have indicators, and this would be assessed in the finance delivery chain. The finance delivery chain can trial these. For example, a recipient can, it's more like the other actors you're looking into. For example, the intermediaries will be assessing the providers, and intermediaries can also assess the recipients, how they are performing on different criterias. For example, how they are performing in terms of flexible granting, so they can give feedback around that. And it's a feedback around different actors along the chain. So as I said, intermediaries can give feedback to the recipients and intermediaries can give feedback to the donors. And similarly for the donors, they can give feedback to the intermediaries and recipients can also give feedback to the donors and intermediaries. At this moment, we have the markers developed for the donors and intermediaries, meaning these markers indicate what donors and intermediaries should be doing along different principles. And it could be done in different ways. Scorecards is one of the ways. It could also be a self-assessment. It could also be done in the external evaluation and other different ways. And in the 360 accountability, it's like there are different actors, bilaterals, multilaterals, governments, international NGOs. So it's basically the breakdown of the recipients and intermediaries and the providers, what they could look like, and what could this whole process lead to. It could lead to having giving feedback, providing support, improving and empowering, and ultimately having collaborative design and trust between all these actors. I'm giving an example of how the markers look like. For example, in the principle when devolving decision making to the lowest appropriate level, one of the markers is call for proposals, tendering, contracting, and project design gives preference to the local organization. And the indicators for that would mean there's budget allocated for co-designing, budget allocated for local organizations for co-designing with communities, and also donors and intermediaries accepting the proposals in national languages, and donors and intermediaries being flexible on eligibility criteria. So these are the markers and indicators example that I'm sharing. And in the 360 accountability way, it could be done in a different ways. In the 360 accountability way, accountability approach, a recipient can give feedback and rate donors and intermediaries against these markers and criteria, against these markers and indicators through different mediums. It could be through dialogues. It could be through some sort of forums. It could be some sort of storytelling. So there are different ways of doing the 360 accountability, but the whole idea of it is being open to feedback, and recipients also able to provide feedback to the donors, and donors being open to listening from recipients and intermediaries. So that's the whole idea of 360 accountability. And that's how we believe that we will be able to have more transparency, more acceptance to the feedback, and more acceptance also, not just listening to the feedback, but also on reacting and acting to those feedback, so that we are heading towards an effective LLA, and not just in commitment, but also in practice. So this is how we have been approaching it. I'll just keep it to this for now, and maybe other speakers can speak, and then I can maybe come back again if time permits.
Sure. Thank you so much, Roji, for sharing that short and very insightful presentation. And I'm so happy to see the LLM markers really evolving and unfolding. I think it's also a product of the Nepal workshop that also took place recently. And I really like what you mentioned about the LLM markers, that here it can be used in different contexts. The donors can be more accountable to the intermediaries and recipients among family finance delivery chain, where we really challenge the upward accountability dynamic that has been happening for so long, um, and um, and the discourse has been all about. So how does upward accountability look, and how can we dismantle that? So I'm so happy that uh, IIT is doing that. And one of the things that you mentioned, that as you shared the principle one markers, I think it's very nice that we have markers developed for donors and intermediaries that really does some self-assessment, like budget allocation is there for co-designing. I think that's so important, and that only enables it to really reflect the local voices and the local stories that the communities are really facing at the primary forefront. So thank you so much, Roji, and I will definitely come back to you. And let me go to Azad Bhai now, and it really connects well with what Roji just shared, that how can we really pursue downward accountability. And I know that you have been leading the local government initiatives on climate change for the last few years, and it has been a pioneering case study for locally led adaptation, has won Global Center on Adaptations Award for LLA in the last in COP28. So if you can speak a little bit about, how is Logic a different project than any other adaptation project, and what really makes Logic stand out? And if you could also share a little bit about based on your expertise, that how are you working to build the capacities of Bangladeshi local communities and governments for greater accountability that relates to climate finance. Over to you, Azam.
Thank you, Afsara, and very welcome to other panelists. And it's a very intense opportunity for me to share my expertise. Although I'm not someone that like to, talk too much than working on the background. Since I had a background to, leading the national adaptation plan, so it was an opportunity for me to reflect those, the planning process to implement in the logic, and this is how it actually stand out as a different project than the others. So let me also give you some brief background of the project, that how it has systematically, the prioritize the locally led adaptation. As now LLA has become more buzzword than really actually reflecting on the ground. So we thought that, okay, let's test and try some, at least one model which truly reflect the, locally led adaptation principles. And I'm sure that, the IID has done some 360-degree accountability metrics where, the logic was one of the initiatives, and then ICCCAD also did the same for the logic. And I'm sure that all they reflect actually, the close alignments of the LLA principles. So let me also start with the, the importance of the local government and the local government institutions. Because if we truly, they implement the locally led adaptation projects, it has to be institutionalized. And then institutionalized in our country, local government division, or the LGD, who actually, regulate and manage this all the local government institutions like the Union Parishad, Upajala Parishad, who are the main front in terms of, the assessing the needs of the local people. So we thought that, okay, why not we, they involve or take the lead to the local government division to systemize this local adaptation effort. So I think one of the biggest mindset, or the, the systemic change has been happened in the local government division. Also, the institutions or the local government institutions that we have been working is, the going beyond the traditional development efforts to a climate resilient development. Because local government institutions or the ministries are the one of the key ministries who are allocating the development finance, but mostly they are looking to the, the development initiatives. But if we can integrate the climate issues with the development, then we can make sure that, okay, say development or climate, the inclusive, and then it also, the providing the support to the local communities and the institutions. So we follow the two financing model. One is we call the Climate Resilience Fund, which is actually targeting the most vulnerable communities, most vulnerable, the households, I must say. And there is an innovative way how we actually pick those households or the vulnerable. And also let me, they take the accountability that we are, doing the positive discrimination, and in this case we are prioritizing the women as a change agent, or the forefront of the adaptation. So therefore we've been working in the 9 districts currently in 4 geographical locations: in the coastal, in the riverine areas, in the How region, as well as in the Chittagong Kiltricks, 4 geographical region, where we actually, they try to figure out who are the vulnerable due to the climate change, not by the poverty, not by the other factors, that the associate factors, but climate is actually the sole responsible for their local level vulnerabilities or the households level vulnerability. And then we provide, and then we build their capacities in terms of how their existing livelihoods or what are the other active livelihoods options there that they could pursue, and then they could, they develop along the process so that they can reduce the vulnerabilities. So this is how this, the CRF or the Climate Resilience Fund has started to, the playing on the ground. And we followed a graduate model where the communities, women are provided the funds to themselves, and they're the one, we just build their capacities how to, the negotiate with the changing climate, how they can go with the adaptive, the investment that they are making on the ground, and what are the other opportunities that will help them to, pursue their livelihoods without much interruption from the climate change impact. So this is how this model works. And we got the amazing result because the women actually took the lead, and then they have changed their life, and then they started with something, and then they started to doing a big thing. And in the meantime, from last year, they also formed the cooperatives. As you know, the country, we have a cooperatives division, but this cooperative division never pursued for the climate issues. They only pursued the women issues, farmer issues, these different categories, but they never pursued the climate issues. So we help them to, the developing a new window of avenue where they can invest, where they can regulate, where they can, they work for the mainstreaming of those vulnerable women. So that's how this climate cooperatives concept has emerged. And now the women who started 5 to 6 years back with a small initiative, they actually formed these cooperatives, and then they're starting to invest in the medium scale uh, investment. And what is the encouraging thing is that when they started their initiative, they were a very small, they're fragmented, they didn't know how to invest on the climate adaptation. But along the process, what they have done so far, they're now even thinking to tapping the private capitals, which is very encouraging. We have invested only $300 to each women, but now they are even, trying to tap more than $500 for each from the private sector capital. So this is how we are trying to sustaining these initiatives on the climate resilience with the climate resilience fund. The other thing that we are doing with is the PBCRG, performance-based climate resilience grants, because without having a proper institutional setup, you cannot make sure that beyond the project, institutions are taking guard of this or taking care of the climate adaptation efforts. And our primary initiative was to reduce the structural barriers what every the community members are facing. Let's say in the coastal areas, the fresh water access to clean water is a costly things, or is a very the important issues that they are fighting against. I mean, extremely they are struggling with. So then the community took the initiatives, and then they pushed to the local institutions, and the local institutions, they set up this like rainwater harvesting system, and then somewhere they also established like the solar supported irrigation facilities in some areas. I mean, recently I just saw one initiative where they re-excavated like 3 kilometers of the canal through which they conserve the rainwater harvest, and this water is the conserved water is now used for the agricultural the production. So there the one season agricultural field turned into the three multiple crop. So it's in terms the reducing their vulnerabilities through the ensuring the or increasing the food security and others. So this is how this PBCRG is the um, working on the ground. But the main issue is on the PBCRG is the performance, assessing the performance. So in the performance, we have a set criteria where institutions, they need to qualify that how much they are their performance are qualify for getting the allocation. And currently, the local government in its division, they every year, they allocate the fund for the local government institutions development fund based on three criteria. One is their area remoteness, and the other is the size of the population. But it actually does not reflect the climate issues and the vulnerabilities. So therefore, the communities or the areas where they're mostly vulnerable, but they have a limited number of people because some of them already have migrated from that place to another, they will get less this allocation. So to reduce that the structural barrier, in 2023, what we have done is that we have developed climate vulnerability index. As you know, that all our climate models, they come up with this the attributional data that what could be the consequence of the climate change. Let's say precipitation will increase, the heat will intensify, the cyclone will increase. But what about this, the quantifying those, their current vulnerability due to the risk of the climate change. So what we have done through this process, and all the local government institutions were categorized in this vulnerability index where they got the unique score. So now we can, we can know that which union are the main, the most vulnerable, which Upazila is most vulnerable, which district is most vulnerable, so that government plan and, they allocate the finance accordingly. The other, I think, important thing happened last year is the government, this taken this CVI as part of their finance allocation process. From this year, government is now allocating 25% for the CVI. That means that local government institutions which are most vulnerable, or the local union which are most vulnerable, they will likely to get more, the development financing. And now we are also, working that the additional finance, how they will plan, how they will implement, and how they will report back to the Ministry of Local Government and then subsequently to the Ministry of Environment, through which we can ensure that, okay, so these are the climate effort that, done by the local government institutions locally, it has implemented, and then report back to the international community as well. And for this, we have developed the LAPA, Local Adaptation Plan of Action, which is actually, we build the capacity of the local people, institutions, and then local leaders, and then they actually develop their own local adaptation plan. What are the, the locally led solutions that they would pursue from the development grants that they would, receive from the government next 4 or 5 years. So this is how this, the LAPA has been working. And now we are, since it's it's getting more and more attention from the government and then development partners as well. So we're now trying to scale it up for, the rest of the country. So we are working on this, and let's hope for the. So I'll stop here. Maybe I'm taking it a little long, but it's always pleasure to, when I talk about the logic. It's there are many areas that it's actually, so we can proudly say that it actually, the helping the locally led adaptation principles to be implemented fully on the ground. Thank you. Over to you, Afsana.
Okay, thank you so much, Azad Bhai. I think that was so beautifully put down, and how you have explained the Community Resilience Fund and the performance-based climate resilience plans. I think it really captures the whole essence of how accountability or in climate finance to really personally should look like. And we have also assessed logic through the scorecards accountability approach, and I think ICCCAD was also very happy with the findings, because as you mentioned, women are 100% involved here, from planning to decision making to even investing, and I think the future roadmap, like as you mentioned, like being part of a cooperative, and also tapping into the prospect of private capital is really, I think, inspiring. And I really enjoyed listening to the climate vulnerability index that government of Bangladesh is also planning to take into account in their finance division. And I think since we already have the climate fiscal framework in Bangladesh existing, so I think it really aligns well with the motto of making the ministry's climate proof, and making sure that there is a nexus between development projects and climate change agendas. Because if we don't do that, there won't be climate change, won't be institutionalized, and communities will keep on losing. So thank you for sharing. And I think what you also mentioned about LAPA and how grants would be given based on the LAPAs is also very inspiring. So thank you, and I'll come back to you for sure with a follow-up question. Now let me move to Raju Bhai, and it would be very interesting to know about the Green Accountability Platform, because it's a mechanism that really strengthens civil society's voices for climate justice, especially those with less voices for decades now. And it also, the Green Accountability Platform, which is an initiative of WRI, the World Bank, it also sparks a sense of inspiration for a more just and equitable future. And South South North is also part of it. So if you can tell us a little bit about the platform and you know how Bangladesh is really working on the accountability forefront of this green accountability platform, and what we are trying to achieve through this initiative. Over to you, Raju.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was listening a lot of interesting work around, and to be very honest, Green Accountability Platform is not bringing anything very new concept. Rather, we are trying to build on our experiences over the decades in the CSO, struggle for getting access to the decision-making process of climate finance and the use of the funds here. So basically, Green Accountability Platform, a little background about, is backed by World Bank, World Bank's Greater GPSA program. I think you're aware of the GPSA program. So, and also along with WRI is a consortium of South South North and Hororo Foundation. Roughly, we are working 5 countries along with Bangladesh. We work in Senegal, Mexico, Cameroon, and Brazil. We from 5 countries. Each country we have 5 CSOs. We have kind of 2 sort of like large or small scale grantees. One large grantees from each countries and fewer small scale grantees. Basically, we are focusing on 3 bigger theme. Number one, like strengthening CSOs in a kind of monitoring climate finance and advocating for it, for a rational distribution and better access for the communities. Second one is about capacity building of the local level, like local government organizations. And the number 3 is like more like make the climate, what can I say, like climate finance and accountability related data more open to the communities. It's very interesting, like linking with the Bangladesh experience. We are basically have long experience. I can tell you many number of organizations, they are after the tracking the climate finance process, how these things is evolving here in Bangladesh and how it is being used over the years. Like we are with our grantees, particularly Bangladesh grantees, we are almost doing the same thing. But the beauty of the Green Accountability Platform is we are trying to make it more organized and created a space for exchanging the experiences of the different countries, so that we can, while we are advocating, WRI is a think tank organization, and we try to generate evidence and like bring this to the advocacy level at the global platforms, particularly to the COP process. So we created a kind of all the grantees, we are exchanging our experiences and learnings, like how we can make it better, particularly in terms of how can we bring in transparency in determining the finance at the global and on national level, and how these things are, the funds are going to be disbursed and being used, and how communities and all the other sectors are involved in the implementation process, and how we are documenting the learning process. Like, yeah, I can tell you, like, with my long experience with Transparency International, like I have tracked more than 100 projects from the trust funds, and our experience are frustrating. Like, yeah, still, like we're always focus on the lackings of the um, amount of fund from the global to national levels, but we are always like it's another big concern about how these things are implementing, because the resources are limited, and we have a lot of experiences about like how like governance challenges can take us away from the projected goal. We are, it's a kind of two-way behind process. Like once we have lack of resources, and the second one is like we're not ensuring the proper implementation, the best use of the resources we have. So yeah, like in Bangladesh, among our 5 grantees, one is working on like how these climate action data can be more inclusive to the communities, to the organizations, to the CSOs, and to the governments. And 3 of our organizations are very closely working with the capacity development, the process of the local level governments, particularly the union parishad, because yeah, the union parishad's dynamics, although is implementing organizations, but Bangladesh local dynamics are a bit tricky and more political, and participation of the communities. Like a lot of organizations, most of you have a lot of experiences how it is difficult to ensure community engagement. Like we have tried a lot, and but we encountered with a lot of challenges there as well. So we're trying to document, and we are like our community our practice process is basically bringing all the experiences, like how other country CSOs are, experiencing the similar sort of challenges related to ensuring transparency of the funds, how they are, what can I say, like how they experience how participation, community, particularly real community participations, can make it more meaningful, and how it can be, like how different country experiences can fit for other countries where similar challenges are existing. So it's a kind of bit organized thing. What we have done before in a scattered manner, we're trying to do the same things, but we're continuously trying to improvise our learnings and strategies for towards the development process of how we can make it better, more accountable, more transparent, and can ensure more participation from the CSOs who are working at the grassroots level. So this is a bit background of the thing, but apart from that, our grantees and they all are involved in the kind of advocacy process with their knowledge. Like over the years, it's a very short time, like 1 year work. Like it's a very new platform as well. We just passed kind of 7 8 months, and it was a bit difficult for Bangladesh context because we had a lot of political and social turbulence in the meantime. But our grantees are, they're very strongly based in the local context. So yeah, they're navigating well. We know, particularly for the Bangladesh context, our grantees, and we have a lot of experiences before, like what are the challenges of participation and climate finance. So we figured out like the communities, mostly the biggest challenge of Bangladesh case you touched a bit before, like our finance mechanism is very centric, like a very top down. The finance division, like even they're very powerful, more than powerful than the climate minister of climate change. So like, yeah, like cutting down the African maps, they just drive like who will get what portion of money, and when it goes to the ground, like the even like I can bring the best example, like this year we are gonna get a revised NDC plan, but I have never had any of our grantees, nor any of our, allied CSOs, like they are aware of anything of it. So yeah, like few of our government contracts, they're talking about like they are a bit interested to bringing the adaptation needs into the NDC process, but still we are blind, like what is happening over there. So we are a bit trying to, like, along with all of our 5 grantees, with all of our experiences at the local level, we are trying to prepare a kind of joint position paper and communicate to probably we'll communicate this shortly to the government. Like, yeah, CSOs are waiting for with all of their experiences, and there are a lot of things government can consider, particularly when this time, like it is becoming a bit kind of after COP20, it is becoming a really important topic for considering the labor rights context and just energy transition, particularly countries like Bangladesh, when the major fashion brands, they decided to cut down 30% emission from their supply chain, and Bangladesh is one of the leading supplier, and our industries are not progressing well. And when government last time they determined the NDC plan, even the workers are left behind. Even they didn't talk to the industries as well. We had a lot of consultation with the industries before, so we are really hopeful like this time it's gonna be happen, and our CSOs are well experienced right at this moment. They have long kind of experience like where exactly participations are gonna be failed, and even the way of like how trust fund disbursing uh, their funds, which doesn't follow a vulnerability map, rather which union parishad or which local level government organization can place a good proposal to them or can place early proposal to them. So there are a lot of debates. CSOs have a lot of experiences, and this is really high time to communicate to the national governments as well. All these, like, along with Bangladesh, like all our 5 countries, we have a kind of similar experience. So we are trying to tying up all together and trying to, advocate at the global level, particularly when we think about like even the GCA process. Yeah, they're a bit robust, but we can see like they even mobilize projects for clean cooking technologies, but they miss like to do something for heavy industries like fashion industries who are contributing more than 10% in the global emission. So there are a lot of experience we are gaining through our local channels, and we're trying to working closely with the local national governments and bringing this up to the global level. So I think, yeah, I'm talking a bit more. Yeah, over to you, Afsara, if you have any follow-up question, and
Sure.
all the panelists. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you so much, Raju bhai. I think that was so helpful that you mentioned about what is this green accountability platform doing, and also how you're synergizing with other countries like Senegal, Mexico, Cameroon, and Brazil, and it's really good to hear that you're definitely taking into account the knowledge. I would say, like, the knowledge that CSOs has been having on climate change adaptation fund, but also mitigation fund. So that's a great thing, and also how you're working to monitor climate finance better, and how it can be accessed by communities. We're working on capacity building, so very important factors. That even the adaptation gap report of last year, it also mentioned that these are few of the gaps that really needs to be tackled if we want to invest heavily in the adaptation fund, and it's very important that what you mentioned is to exchange learnings on how other countries are doing in terms of transparency, in terms of determining like where climate finance flowing is working, why isn't it working. There are also political and socioeconomic dynamics that always needs to be taken into account, and without that, actually, it will be very hard to implement anything. So thank you for sharing that challenge, and I think throughout my research experience, I also always witness it that the local context, when it comes to the politics, when it comes to the political dynamic at the local level, can really challenge the whole project and its outcome. So how better we can communicate that with the government bodies and make sure that our policies also address this loophole, is a very important factor. And it's good that you're working with grantees in the advocacy process. And I hope that we can do like a synergistic collaboration with different finance ministries and other stakeholders to make sure that accountability is at the core of climate finance. So thank you for sharing. We are almost at the end of the session, but however, I would like to give all the speakers 2 minutes, and I would ask all of you the same question. As you know, the COP30 this time is happening in Brazil, and we also have the new qualified quantified goal, which raises the bar for climate adaptation funding. So I just wanted to ask you that, how can COP30 be different this time, and what can it reshape for accountability and climate finance and LLA when it comes to climate change adaptation. So I would just like to go ahead with Roji, and then we can move to Azad Bhai, and then we can come down to Raju Bhai. Thank you.
Thank you, Afsara, and it was really great listening to Raju and Ajad about their work on green accountability and logic, respectively. It was very indeed great learnings from them. So answering to your question, I'd like to give a bit of context around what our plans look like ahead in the run up to the COP as well, and yeah, link it to what COP 30 this year could address. So you mentioned about the Kathmandu workshop, which was in April. So in our accountability, in our markers journey, we are looking for the co-development of these markers, developed collaboratively with different stakeholders, including the donors, CSOs, and different intermediaries. So Kathmandu workshop was the first step towards having such platform where we brought CSOs, intermediaries, and donors in the same space. We are having a similar session in CBA 19 in Brazil, but it's going to be a pretty short one where we also seek to gather further feedback around the markers, and then building on these events, we are having a workshop in June during the London Climate Action Week, where we would still be receiving feedback around the markers from different actors. And then we also have some few others lined up in September, and in the run in COP 30, we plan to have all these markers consolidated with the collaboration and feedback from different actors. Aside from these events, we also will seek online feedback from different institutions, and if anybody is willing to provide their feedback around the markers, we are more than happy to work together. And we will also be trialing the markers with different institutions, working with CSOs, trying to understand what communities are doing. For example, Raju was talking about the CSOs and the transparency and the accountability work the CSOs are doing in different ways. So we also want to see what CSOs, what the communities have been doing differently in terms of ensuring accountability. So this is what our journey looks like in the run up to the COP 30, and we plan to have a toolkit or a guidance around these markers so that the funders, intermediaries, as well as the CSOs have an idea about how to use these and how to make actors accountable. So in this scope, I guess, building on these different feedback around the markers, different accountability work that different other people have been doing, and given that the COP 30 is placing a high importance around the global goal on adaptation, I think it would be really great if we could also bring these aspects into the global goal on adaptation, which is focused on the programmatic sides of adaptation, which is also important, which is very crucial. But I think having the perspectives of accountability, ensuring transparency, more mutual accountability is very crucial, so that the adaptation that we are doing is truly locally led or community led. And I think there could be a space for us to advocate towards global goal on adaptation, where we could be, where we could be probably collectively advocating about ensuring the effective LLA and bringing these different aspects of accountability and transparency. I guess that's how I see for the COP 30.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing, Yuji. I would like to move to Azad Bhai.
Thank you, Apsara. I mean, it's a great to listening both of the panelists. It's a very the rich discussion, especially the 360 degree scores and then indicators how they are. I mean, Roji was explaining, refining those indicators and then move with those indicators to ensuring the transparency. So for me, I think if you combine if you see the last two COPs, two COPs was actually, the focusing on the climate finance mostly. So this COP, I would like to see that LLA will get more preference in the upcoming COP, because the without ensuring the locally led adaptation, the whatever the adaptation investment that we are focusing on, it will not sustain, and it will not they benefit the people that we are actually trying to they save from these consequences. So I really hope that this will get a top agenda in the COP, upcoming COPs as well, COP as well. But from our side, I think that the transparency and accountability. This is how this whole the performance-based climate resilience grant concept has been developed to ensure that local government and institutions are accountable. I mean, they are making sure their transparency in terms of their performance, and through the performance they are receiving the grants, so that there is a positive the competition among the institutions to making sure the transparency, and through the performance grants they will be the subsidized, or they will be compensated for their effort. And I really hope that the CVI, that climate vulnerability index, is actually also ensuring that climate justice in a way that the most vulnerable the area will get more financing. But it has the some areas to institutionalizing full this although government has adopted, but full institutionalization they need some time. And we also need a reporting mechanism through which we can capture systematic investment, how it has impacted the lives of the people on the ground, and how much the investment has been made, and where this investment has been made, so that anyone can see that where the investment has gone and how it has impacted the lives of the people. So I'm really looking forward to this LLA being the topmost agenda in the new, the collective quantified goal in the COP. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Azad Bhai. Okay, on to Raju Bhai.
Yeah, I guess like this COP gonna be pretty interesting after the Trump government's decisions. Climate finance would be a very crucial topic for this COP as well. But I think like along with all of our experiences, like can describe to the global leaders like how like transparency, accountability, and participation can be ensured at the country levels as well, like our experiences and our work can flag like how the global funding institutes are being failing to communicate accordingly, like how they are failing to prioritize work adaptation and mitigation needs to be prioritized, and how like it clearly indicates how problematic this existing model of fund disbursement and how it can be better, including like ensuring community participation and creating better space for CSOs and national organizations, like particularly who are working at the local level. So this would be a very big takeaway, along with like crucial topics like how local needs can be focused, because we have a vast experience from Asia, Africa, and Latin America. So we're mostly covering all the continental needs, as well like few other important topics were really emerging about just transition and local led adaptation. So yeah, thank you,
you.
Apsara. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much to all the speakers. I think this has been a very great session for me. I learned lots, and I'm sure the attendees who participated also enjoyed this session a lot. And couple of things to highlight, like what we want to see in COP30 being achieved for accountability and locally led adaptation is that we want to see something being incorporated, when I say something, that's like ensuring mutual accountability and that being reflected in the global goal on adaptation and making analogy a point that you made that adaptation needs to be really locally led adaptation. Otherwise, it will really lose the true essence of sustainability. And going on what Azad Bhai said, I think I really enjoyed, as you mentioned, that COP30 should really put locally led adaptation as a first priority. And it should also take into account the sustainability impact, as Moji also mentioned, of LLA, that it not only actually enables the local community to be part of the adaptation processes when it comes to decision making, but also working alongside them, building their capacities, making sure that the institutions that are surviving at the local level, they are also accountable, and there is a positive competition, as you mentioned, that performance-based resilient grants are doing. So hopefully COP30 really acknowledges financial mechanisms that are already in place, like PBCRG, which really wants to change, wants to incorporate LLA institutionally, working with the local government. And what you mentioned on the climate vulnerability index is also very important, that we really prioritize that, and we really prioritize the vulnerable communities who are being impacted by climate change. And hopefully the government will take a firm agenda on that. And coming to Raju Bhai, I think what you mentioned, like accountability, transparency, and participation should be at the core of COP30. And what you mentioned rightly is that the agenda of just transition and its nexus also with locally led adaptation, as you mentioned, that we are also not focusing on industries such as Apple sector, which brings so much export to us, and the core the core body of those exports are the workers, and it's our responsibility to really protect their rights, their well-being, their productivity, and making sure that we're creating positive change that is just, that is greener, and that is really cost effective for the communities when it comes to adaptation. So thank you so much to all the panelists, and if it's okay, then I will just end our session here. But it was a pleasure to really be part of this panel, and it would be great if the Gobeshona team can also take a screenshot of all our faces, so that we can really share the key messages of this session with everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ajad Bhai. Thank you, Raju Bhai, and thank you, Roji. Hopefully see you soon.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
everyone.
Take care. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.